That's
I'm going to plead the fifth then.
Me too.
Well, that's why she always.
That sounded like Peggy.
Learning this model.
It was. It was.
All right, it's 8 o'clock. Good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Tracy Irby and I'm the director here at the Center for Women Entrepreneurs. We're happy to see so many in person and so many online as well. So the Center, for those of you who it's your first time, the Center for Women Entrepreneurs was funded in 2015 by the state legislature just to help promote women entrepreneurs anywhere in the state of Texas. You don't have to be affiliated with TWU to take advantage of our services. And we help through small business advising, networking and training events like this. We have many different accelerator programs growing across the state right now. And one of our most popular programs are our grant programs. So we're all glad you're here. Our center is part of the larger Jane Nelson Institute for Women's Leadership. They're dedicated to preparing more women to take on successful roles in business and public service. Our 3 centers provide women with the education to establish executive level careers, skills for building entrepreneurial businesses, and the framework needed to run for public office. If you haven't been down the hall, we do have a new leadership hall down there that is just beautiful about women in politics and public policy. It's now open to the public, so if you're down that way, make sure you do a stop in there. I'd like to introduce our staff to you. So we have Barbara Ranke. She is our coordinator and she will be on Facebook helping the people there. We have Kimberly Nielsen. She is online up there. She's our online hostess. And we have Donalisa Stinyard over here. And she is now, if you haven't heard, the new associate director for the Center for Women Entrepreneurs. So we're,
Thank you.
so we're very happy for her. So what we like to do all the time is know who's in the room, and it's always helpful to the speaker as well to know who's here. So if you would like to quickly say your name and your business, we'll go around the room. Would you like to start there in the front row? And online, you can put your information in the chat.
I'm Ashley Winston, and I'm the owner of Serious Leading Service.
Right.
Hi, my name is Natalie Burch, and I'm of Royal Athlete.
I'm Heather Walker. I'm the owner of Bright Smiles by Heather. It's a professional tooth whitening studio.
I'm Marilyn Medina. I'm also the owner of Medina Cuba Plumbing LLC.
I'm Tasha Hearns, the Senior Director for the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, where we provide resources and support to small business leaders across the place.
And I'm Cynthia Thomas, and I am an independent facilitator with Love and Logic. And I'm not one of their lawyers, but I work closely with them as an independent facilitator. They developed it. And so good to be here.
I'm Erica Urban. I work at the Horses Axe, which is the axe throwing venue here in Denton and in Venice.
Morning, my name is Mirka, and I am the president of MI Quality Services.
My name is Lauren Garrett, and I am the general manager with Perfected Bodies Fitness.
Hi, I'm Ashley Lascore, and I'm the owner of Silver Lining Home Care Solutions.
My name's Amanda Gibson, and we have the Gibson Agency for all your insurance needs.
My name is Michelle Holloway. I'm owner of Lifestyle Transitions and I'll help people save.
Hi, I'm Jessica DeLeon. I'm working on launching a website that helps people achieve their goals.
I'm Ann Morgensen. I'm a health coach and I empower individuals to take control of their health, lose their weight, and be in their BMI and just enjoy life, the best version of themselves.
Good morning. My name is Samantha Chapman Saul. I'm a nonprofit founder of Birdie's Pride for suicide prevention and mental health awareness.
All right, I'll come back to you.
All right. Hi, I'm Caroline Hirschbach, and I am the owner of CKH Coaching, where I help women through career transition. This is my assistant Cecilia.
Glad to have all of you here this morning. So now I am pleased to introduce our speaker for the day. Holly Burrow is the founder of EqALL. I've never said it out loud. EqALL Business Solutions. They support startups and spaces that help them grow. As a partner, we build client rapport, track growth metrics, and help build a narrative reportable success. We work on the behalf of each organization to serve early stage founders on an at-need basis, keeping operation costs low through program support and development. As a founder focused on serving founders, Holly is an innovative, creative solution provider, is experienced as a small business growth strategist, and has a commitment to agility for growth. Today, she focuses on growing community engagement, guiding entrepreneurs to capital and business development to open the door for new startups to find success. Using her experience as a founder, she is committed to the growth of both entrepreneurs and their ventures. And I have to say, I have known her for years. She is one of the hardest working people in the ecosystem. So I'll just take a second and introduce myself a little bit beyond that. So I come from a background of traditional business. I have had food service businesses of many different ilk. When I sold my last location, I had a opportunity to reflect on what was really hard about that journey I had been on for over a decade. And it was that there wasn't individual help. Like there are lots of programs out there, but as an entrepreneur, there's not always capacity to join them. And so I wanted to build a solution to help provide that to women and small business owners in general, because that's what was missing for me. And so that's been my mission and my focus as I have done what I've been doing for a few years now, is to figure out how to help solve that problem. Is how do we create a space where small business owners can actually get the help that they need when they need it. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about accessing capital. And that's a question that I think most small business owners have in general, is how do I get more money to help grow my business? And sometimes it's a lot of money and sometimes it's a little bit of money. So it doesn't matter what that dollar amount is, there are still barriers in place. And sometimes it's just understanding what that playing field is and where to enter the playing field. So we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about that and figure it out.
Turn it on the side. So there you go. Could be green.
It's green.
There you go.
All right. So today we're going to talk about how to plan for the strongest growth for your business. Oh. Full service, Holly. You are beautiful. Amazing. So today we're going to talk about what is capital. What does that mean? How do you get to it? We're going to learn how to overcome some of the biggest challenges in accessing that capital as a small business. And we're going to discover the right types of capital for your business, considering what you're doing and where you are in that journey. Because I feel like after many years of talking to business owners, that's actually a piece that's missing, is everybody has ideas about what that is, but they don't know where they sit in a spectrum and how to get that capital when they need it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what is risk mitigation and why does that matter to the people that you're getting the money from? And then we're going to talk about what matters more than the money, because when you talk to any entrepreneur, their first answer is always money when you ask them what they need. So we're going to talk about what is actually more important than that money that's at the top of your mind. All right, so a little bit about EqALL. We support startups in the spaces that grow them, as Tracy mentioned. So as I mentioned, I'm very, very mission driven in the way that I'm building solutions for the small business space. And we do work nationwide to do this. So a lot of what I do is provide business advisory services as a white label service on the back end of programming. And then we use the data that we gather from that journey to help organizations build programs that really serve the needs of the founders that they've brought in. So it's all about trying to create solutions that genuinely solve the problems that you guys are having as small business owners. We do that two ways, as I mentioned, advisory support and program support. And I go through all that because every time I meet people there, they don't understand what I do because they're like, you're everywhere. I see your face. I see things happening. What is it that you actually do? So that's why I took a minute to kind of explain why I'm so many different places. And it seems like I do so many things because that has been a point of confusion across the board is like, what is it that Holly actually does other than just helping founders? Because I love to come out and network and meet other small business owners. So I wanted to take a minute and make sure everybody kind of understood what drives me forward to do that. So one of the most amazing things is that small business isn't small at all. The traditional description from the SBA is that it is anything less than 500 employees with an annual revenue under $7.5 million. And I don't know about any of you guys, but that's a lot. So I think there's a lot of sort of a negative mindset when people say small business and you think it means tiny, and it doesn't. It simply means you fall below a monetary and numbered threshold, and it puts you into a category that the government has created. So I say that because when I first heard that, it made a big difference to my brain. It made a huge difference to how I perceived what I was doing and what I was growing, and knowing that in all likelihood, I would probably always be a small business that would never change, because that's going over $7.5 million is a lot of money. So the likelihood of me getting there is probably not going to happen, but plus being over 500 employees, that would be, I don't want to manage 500 employees. But for me, it was a magic moment in my brain where I was like, oh, okay, that's just a category. It doesn't mean that I'm tiny. I can do really big things as a small business. There are 2.2 million businesses with 5 or fewer employees in Texas. That means that there is a huge amount of commerce being created by very small, very economical, very tightly run small businesses. And I feel like it's important to give us credit for that, because a lot of the people that are in this talk today are the people that are building those small businesses that are running that way. So those small businesses represent 89.4% of all Texas small businesses. That's gigantic. That it's that 89% of Texas small businesses are under 5 employees. Like that. So you're in good company if you run a small business and you are running efficiently and keeping it small. That is okay. You're in good company. That's the way the majority of small businesses are in the state of Texas. And if just 1 out of 3 small businesses in Texas hired an employee, the US would be at full employment.
So if you were a business of 1, if you were a solopreneur, are you still technically a small business or no?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Last thing.
Yeah.
My
question is because someone was just recently on the website to register herself, and it said on the website's form for the state of Texas to register, it said you were only a small business, you have like at least 2.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you still have to pay taxes. As a small business. For me, that's the marker. If I have to pay small business taxes, I am a small business. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about what is capital. And capital is the money that you need to have available to pay for your operations and be able to grow. And I feel like there's a lot of mystery around that word. And the reason I take an opportunity to pause and focus on what it is because with the growth of the tech startup space, there's a lot of words that float around capital, around funding. And so I wanted to kind of hone in on what is capital, and it is simply the money it takes to operate and grow your business. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, but it is what it takes to keep you operating. And sometimes you need more than you can supply in the first few years of cash flow to be able to keep growing. So understanding what the vernacular means and how to use it when you're talking to people that might be able to fund your business is super important. So common capital options for small startup businesses are going to be bootstrapping. That's the word that I think everybody's super familiar with at this point. Pretty much just means scrap it together. Use your own means, whether it's, you know, your credit cards, your savings account, asking your mom, asking your brother. You know, bootstrapping just means pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and making it happen. So in that same line of thinking, it's going to be credit card, HELOC, so home equity lines of credit is a really common one. I would say that's one of those that I feel like don't do that unless you're very confident and have a built-in line of revenue. Because I hear people talking about that quite frequently, and that's a huge risk to take if you are still in ideation mode and you haven't actually gone through customer validation and vetted that your business has a line of revenue that's available to it, because then you're risking your personal residence to do it. So some of the other methods are going to be much more traditional business lending, lines of credit. You could potentially look to angel investment or use crowdfunding. I will say crowdfunding has been an interesting journey as it has become a thing. When it first came into its own, it was just sort of scrap it together, go out there and market yourself. It is now a process that if you want to go through crowdfunding, you need to really have a plan. And it's the same as building a business plan. You need to have a plan for what you're going to do with the money, how you're going to access it, where the fees are coming from, who you're going to market to, because there's a lot of resources out there for crowdfunding, but not all of them operate the same. And a lot of them require reporting back to the people that have given you money. So you need to have an executable plan to be able to do that well. So I will say, I hear a lot of founders talking about doing that because they think it's fast and easy. It's not really fast and easy. It has its own journey that you have to go through. So I just want people to be aware it's not a quick fix. So the other option in that space of what are the capital options would be invoice factoring, which is something that once you're up and running is an option, but should be looked at very, very carefully to make sure that you are actually still making enough cash flow to keep your business operating in early days, if that's the route you're going to go.
Would grants fall under angel investments?
I don't generally look at grants as capital options. Grants are windfall money. You can't depend on them. There's no guarantee you're going to get them. That's their windfall money. So if you do happen to win one, then you just look at it as I won the lottery essentially, and I'm going to use that money to the best of my ability. But you can't build grants into a plan, because all of these things are a plan. Like you could actually, reach out, contact people, build connections, make them happen, versus grants are a little bit more to chance. Okay, because as amazing as you and your business might be, you never know who else is in the pool. So there's a lot of chance in that strategy. So it's not really a strategy, it's windfall money. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about who are you and what type of business are you building. The three main categories for that are going to be a micro enterprise, a Main Street business, or an innovation business. Innovation is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be some sort of technology business or technology enabled business. It falls into a very specific category of growth. I'm going to pause there and say it again. It's about the growth is why that category is separate. It's not about what they're building. It's about their ability to have high growth very quickly. So there are some funding options that are really specific to that innovation space because of the high growth capacity. So the people that are going to be looking at investing in that space want big returns very fast. So I say that it's not about the technology, it's about growth ability. So then the Main Street business category is going to be exactly what it sounds like. It's a physical brick and mortar shop of some variety. It can be a restaurant, could be a shoe shop, could be a hair salon, a nail salon, doesn't matter like what the actual business is. It's a physical space that people go to shop, and that's a requirement for that category. And then a micro enterprise is going to be something that is kept intentionally small because you're keeping it lean to maximize the amount of money that you're bringing in for your personal lifestyle. And I love the word lifestyle business because a lot of people associate that with like Instagram kind of businesses that are built, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. A lifestyle business is one that you are building a stream of revenue to support the type of life you want to live. So you will not grow it to a $10 million business with 50 or 100 employees, because that's likely not the type of life you want to have, because that's a very saturated, very busy life in your business. You may be able to grow it to 2 or 3 million and travel all over the place and live the life you want to live, but you're building the model to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I would say that if that's where your brain is at and that's the type of business you're building, it's better to just own it and say, this is the type of business I'm building. I'm building this business to give me freedom to live the life I want to live, because it's going to be different capital options as you go through that process and you plan to identify what people are going to be willing to invest in and how you build that structure. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to overcome some of the biggest challenges to accessing capital. So some of the early stage challenges that happen in those first 3 years of building a business are going to be, your business is new. Even if you have done a ton of customer validation, even if you have industry experience working for someone else, even if you come to the table with lots of experience, that business that you're building is new. We don't know as funders if you're able to keep it rolling yet. It takes time to prove that. And one of the perspectives that I encourage everybody that I work with to have is you have to look at the other side of the equation. So you need $25,000 to help buy a kiosk to put your whatever you're selling in a location. That's fine. The people that are giving you that $25,000, you need to do all the things that you can to help de-risk that investment, because that's money that they're entrusting you with. And I had never really looked at it that way when I was a small business, because I just thought they have so much money and I have so little money. Why can't they help? Yeah, that was very, very much my perspective, and it was very disheartening. So I love to have the conversation about, if you're a brand new business, you need to be really clear about why you are the one to be building this business, and what are you doing to help guarantee that that 25,000 or 2.5 million, doesn't matter what the dollar amount is. What are you doing uniquely to make sure that that business is going to be able to grow? Because in that first 3 years of business, it's a really high gamble. Because no matter how much confidence we all have in this room, until you've done it, even you don't know if it's going to work. And I say that as someone who's built businesses that have failed. That I walked in the door like, this is going to work. I'm going to kill this. I know how to do this. I have all the knowledge in my body to make this happen. And I still couldn't make it happen. So that's that piece of like, you've got to figure out how to talk about why it's you going to be able to do this, and what are the things you're going to do to be able to de-risk it for them. I love to use cross-hatched words with different industries. So I specifically chose to use GTM, costs, because that is a text-based word, go to market, that is commonly used when you go through their programming, any kind of knowledge base, or even when you're talking to investors in that space, they want to know what's your GTM strategy. That's not necessarily a vernacular that we use in small business, but I want to intentionally stop some of the word clouding and let people know that what things mean. So go to market is going to be that initial startup phase of how do you get your product or service to the people that want to buy it, whatever that means, whether it's buying technology to get there, whether it's hiring staff, whatever it means. What is that strategy going to be, and what does it cost? Because you won't incur that cost again. So that's why it's a barrier in those first 3 years, is it's startup costs. It's how do you get your product or service to the people that are going to be buying it? And why is now the moment that you're doing that? And being able to explain what the tools you're using to get there are going to do to enable it. And then the last one is educated guessing. Like, kind of circling back to the first thought, is like, no matter how much research you do, you are still just winging in a prairie. Like, you may be totally ready to do this, and you've spent 10 years building the process in your brain, and you have a lot of faith, but there are going to be things that happen. There's no way you could anticipate happening. Like one of my favorite stories is I opened a storefront restaurant and my landlord did not tell me that everybody in the center's leases were ending. And so I had built a business plan around having built-in customers. And all of the people's leases ended within 6 months of me moving in. So then I had a storefront restaurant in an odd location that I had no customers to serve. So I had to figure out, how do I get the food that I'm serving to people that are not going to be coming into the building? Because they were in the process of renovating the building. So they wanted everybody but me out, but they wanted me in because they were trying to sell the building, and it made it attractive as a building.
What a snake.
Pretty much. But there was no way I could have known that, because I did all the research. I went into it feeling super prepared, and in the end I made it work. But I would have never, who would ask that question? When did the leases end? Now I would, I'm gonna guarantee you I would. But at the time, I knew how many people were in the building. I knew how many people worked from their desks day to day. I knew how many cars flipped in and out the parking lot. I mean, I had done all the research, but I could never have foreseen that that was going to be their motivation behind it, and that they weren't going to share that with me. So that's that process of figuring out how much money you're going to make. It's all educated guessing. You're not sure. You're hoping, you're planning, you are doing the research, but you're not sure. So again, there's always going to be challenges, but to overcome some of those challenges, we just make a plan. You have to sort of embrace that process of that planning is never going to end. For a long time, I fought against the idea of a business plan because I didn't feel like it was the best use of my time. I could be out there making money. I am now a convert. There is some magic that happens when you put pen to paper and you have to articulate what it is that you are sharing with the other side of that equation. And there is something magic that happens in the way that you talk about your business and in the way that you think about your business. So you have to be able to prove what your plans are on paper. So what are funders going to be looking for? You have skin in the game. What's the money that you put into the business? So a lot of, in particular, female founders, I hate to say, we are very bad about when we bootstrap, especially in early days, we don't track it. We just think, oh, I'm getting it going. I'm vetting an idea. I'm going to pick out some Facebook ads. I'm going to start a group. I'm going to host some lunch. I'm going to figure it out. All that money is money that you're putting into your business. So any money that you're flowing into your business, you've got to be able to track it on paper from the very beginning, because when you get ready for funding, all of that matters because it shows how in it you are. It shows how invested you are, how much money you put into it, and every $20 lunch that you go out to with someone trying to get a connection and trying to build a stream of revenue, it all counts. It all counts towards building traction on building your business. So being able to track it is vital. And then that process of building that business plan and mapping out your competitive model, you have to be able to prove it. I don't know you yet as a funder. Any banker, any lender doesn't know you. You've got to be able to prove it to them on paper, and the numbers have to come out in black and white. They're not just going to trust you that you have a great idea and you can do it. You have to be able to prove it.
So I'm doing all this, but I have no idea what I'm.
Nobody does. It's okay.
So I started purchasing things for my business before I had an official name for it. Does that still count towards investing into the business?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, track it. Track it.
Yeah. Oh.
And the earlier that you can fully separate, do it. Even if it's in the beginning, you're not ready, you don't have any IN, you're not really ready to operate yet, but you can open a second bank account, even if it's a personal bank account, so that everything is running through one stream. The earlier you can do that, the easier it's going to be able to prove it.
Is that written down somewhere?
Write it down. It's going to be in a minute when you write it down.
So we're gonna wait and hold all questions to the end and let her finish, and then we'll make sure we will have time for Q&A, I promise. No worries.
So the last of that, understanding what your challenges are going to be is you have to know your own numbers, so circling back to your point, you have to be able to track it. You have to be able to talk to your numbers. I talk to so many business owners that have no idea what the difference is between top line and bottom line revenue is. And they want to talk about top line revenue, but that is not how much you take home at the end of the year. And so you've got to know the difference and what the costs are in between and be able to speak to all of the different financial documents. You've got to understand what a profit and loss statement is. If you don't already know what it is, that's okay, but you've got to figure it out. I didn't know what it was. You know, there's a lot of things like that. You've got to understand what your cash flow statement is and what it can tell you about your business month over month. If you use any type of accounting software, even if it's like Wave or QuickBooks or something like that, and you don't have a bookkeeper, those softwares can generate those documents for you. So it's not that you have to go out and spend a ton of money hiring people to do this for you. There is software, and I mentioned Wave because it's free, that they will do it for you. It's a matter of a click of a few buttons, and it will organize your finances for you and give you the documents that you need to be able to talk about the financials of your business. Okay, so as I mentioned in the beginning, one of the challenges is understanding what type of capital fits where you are and where you want to go. So age is just a number, but it's important to understand what the different stages of growth are going to look like. So I meet a lot of founders in the ideation and launch phase. That's my specific space that I help serve is ideation and launch into growth. Once you hit growth, my job is to connect you to other people and get you more serious help that can help get you to the thresholds you're trying to meet. So, but I say that all of that to show like there's a progression up. Everybody starts at the bottom, no matter how many businesses you have had, no matter how much success you've had. When you start a new business, you started ideation and eventually you launch and then you grow. So like even my business in the last year, like I have been in the process of getting traction and understanding what that looks like. And doesn't matter how many businesses I start, you still go through that process of making sure that your idea actually generates revenue. So when you look at the funding, the line that's on the other side there where it says liquidity event, public trading at the top, that is the type of money space that you're in at each one of those phases. So when you're in ideation, you are in what they would call pre-seed, which is going to be $0 to $50,000. Not a huge amount of money, but vital money, and important to understand where you sit in that spectrum, because that category in specific is bootstrapping. And even if you're building something that has huge rapid growth potential, you're still going to bootstrap the beginning. Almost always, because you're testing an idea. Once you get through that initial phase of proving that your idea works, you potentially can get other investors in, and that's when you enter into that launch phase, which starts at the 50K mark. Like that's a very low threshold for building a big business. That's at the launch phase, you might just need $65,000. Doesn't mean you need $6 million. But it's still in that same category of that's your launch phase, and that window of dollars is pretty big. So a lot of the small businesses that I work with, they may never need $250,000 worth of cash. That's a lot of cash. You probably don't need that, especially if you have gone through that ideation and launch phase properly and vetted your idea for revenue growth. Because revenue, let me say it again, you need revenue. You need to be making money, because if you want anybody to fund your business, whether it's that you're looking for investors or lending or any of that, you have to have revenue. You have to be able to prove that at some point they're going to get their money back and then some. Otherwise, they wouldn't be giving it to you to use, because the option is that they can put it in a savings account and get 2% on it. So you have to basically come in above that mark, bare minimum, and be able to pay them back that money and a little bit more. If you're high growth, they want a lot more. But a lot of businesses never get to that high dollar amount, that $2 million amount of money that they need, because they don't need that to grow. They work really hard on that front end of it, and they've got revenue. They're growing to that space. But that's the time period when you start looking at, do I need lines of credit? Do I need ways to fund the business as we're growing? And then the end of that is going to be maturity, and maturity can mean many, many different things. And I know that last month there was a conversation about how to plan for exit. which is a whole other conversation. So this is all about how to get to that point, and then you start making that plan. All right, so these different windows have different types of funding that are available to them. And you guys all get this presentation, so don't. So I do feel like this is the part that everybody really wants to know, is where do you find those sizes of buckets of money? Where do you go hunting for them? So as we mentioned, ideation is going to be like crowdfunding, asking friends, using credit cards, pulling out of your savings, that bootstrapping period of time. That launch phase, that is the longest list. I would like to point out that is the longest list where there's money available to you. And it's because it's under that $250,000 mark. When you get above that $250,000 mark, they want a lot of traction to understand why they should give it to you. So that launch phase, there are a lot more options to be able to get that money and understand how to access it and where to find it. There's a lot more help available at that phase as well. Once you get above that 250K mark, it starts being a little bit more every man for himself, and you need to bring on advisors and make sure that you understand all of the risks and things that you're taking on as you go into those processes. But that launch phase, most of those tools that are available in that list, there's help for them. We're help for them. So finding out what it takes to access that money. And there are things like CDFIs that are specifically designed to help people in the space of that amount of money needed. They're not generally going to go much above that unless you have a really specific model that you can prove.
What's a CDFI? There's a lot of acronyms out there.
There's a lot of that. That's why I was like, don't feel like you need to take notes, because there's a ton of acronyms up there. I would actually encourage you, it's a community-driven financial institution. But I would encourage you, go Google every single one of them. Take the time, figure out what they are. I could do a whole presentation just on that section. So I would encourage you, go Google every single one of those, understand where they fit into what you might be building, and cross the ones that don't fit with what you're doing off. So you don't have to have them in your brain making noise. I could do this, I could do that. Like, understand what it takes to be a part of them, what they're looking for. And if they don't fit where you're at, don't worry about them. Don't let them make noise in your brain. Focus on the stuff that works for what you're building for your business. Okay, so I've mentioned risk a few times, and I love to talk about risk because it's the part that doesn't usually resonate quickly as a small business owner, because we have this mindset of there's so much money out there, why can't I get a little bit of it to help? And that risk mitigation piece is why. It's because, as I mentioned, there are a lot of other options that they have for investing that money that might yield better returns for them. So they're entrusting you with that money. In particular, angel investors, because that's their money. That is their personal private money that they are trusting you to be able to foster well and grow. So understanding that that's a big piece of it, and sort of resonating it and seeing through their lens and understanding how much risk is involved in an early stage business. Even though I know we all feel super confident in what we're building, like that's, otherwise we wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be sitting in the seats if you didn't feel like I have a great idea that I know I can make it work. So these are the ways that you can help mitigate some of that risk. As I mentioned, know your numbers. Be able to talk about them upside down ways, sideways, on your head. You have got to be able to talk about your numbers. Verbatim, cold, in the hallway, at random, in the grocery store. But I'm not kidding. You've got to, because you never know when you're going to meet somebody that is going to be impactful in that space. And it could just be you're chatting in a grocery line. And I use that as an example because it's happened to me. And they made an introduction for me that they weren't the funder, but they made an introduction to me based on a cold conversation in a grocery line. Because I was talking about my business and they were really into it. They overheard me on the phone and they were like, what do you do? So you've got to be able to talk about your numbers, because you never really know when an opportunity to share that stuff is going to come up, and you have to know it cold. Also, if you're not making enough revenue to feel proud about talking about it yet, then there's a lot of spaces that can help, i.e. TWU, that can help you figure out what that looks like to be able to help grow that so that you are super proud to talk about this is the amount of traction that we've had in the last 6 months, the last year. Customer validation. One of my favorite practices that people don't talk about enough is when you are in ideation, talk to your customers. Understand if they want to buy what you think you want to sell. Do it in an organized fashion, host 15 conversations, not interviews, you're not selling, none of that, but 15 conversations that put your idea in front of who you think your customer is and just ask them if they would buy it. Just, you're not selling it to them, it's not ready to sell, but ask them if they would buy it. And I love to look at it as it's the lean in and nod factor. Like if you're talking about what you're building and the other side of that conversation is like, tell me more, I want to know more. You're on to something. You have something people are acutely interested in. They would be interested in finding out what it costs to buy it or finding out what it costs to participate. If they're leaning back and they're just like, that sounds interesting, you might not have landed it quite yet. And that's a journey. And there's nothing wrong with that because sometimes it's all about how you're packaging it or how you're talking about it. It may not be resonating. I mean, what I'm doing currently, there's been like 5 iterations of how I talk about it because I couldn't figure out how to explain what I wanted to build. I saw there was a need, but I couldn't figure out how to talk about it. So that process of figuring it out, do that before you try to sell. Because you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache by going through that process of do people actually want to buy what I'm trying to sell? And then that last piece is strategy. Like I said, business planning. I'm a big convert. I didn't believe in it. I'm now a true believer. Do it. It's important. There's something magical that happens when you go through that process. And all funders are going to be really interested in how you're going to grow. Your why story, sure, it does matter. I mean, I told mine, it matters. People care. We're all human. But what a funder really wants to know, how you're going to grow. They want to know why you started. That's not invalid. But what they really want to spend time digging into is how you're going to grow that business idea that you came up with. All right, so some of the things that you need to be prepared for as you start looking at finding funding for your business and accessing capital are going to be understanding what some of the things they're going to ask you about. Get comfortable with them digging in. They want to know everything you've ever done. They want to know where you've spent your money, where you've made bad decisions, where you've made great decisions. They want to know all about your personal financial history. Because until you've been in business for over 3 years, you are your business, financially speaking, because you're the one that's standing up and saying, I'm taking all of the risk here. I'm going to set it on my back and I'm going to carry it. And now I have to prove to you why I'm a good risk. So be prepared for them to ask you about basically every financial decision you've made in your life, because they did. They want to know. In that first 3 years of business, they want to understand income. And that can be literal income from another resource, whether it's that you still have another job or you have a partner that has a job, or whether you have some sort of retirement income or benefit that's coming from somewhere, or if you have money that's invested somewhere and you're living off of the dividends from that. Like whatever that other stream of revenue is that's making your life function and paying for you to eat groceries, they want to know that. And you should be prepared to be able to talk about it, prove it, share it, don't hide it. And don't just borrow money from your mom, your brother, or your friend and dump it in your bank account before you go to ask for lending, because they want to see it in your bank account for a period of time, because it could disappear just as quickly as it landed. So they're not going to view that favorably. It's just like if you're going in and talking about buying a home. They don't want it to be just magically appeared in your account, because it might disappear when they're not looking tonight. And then that last piece is going to be collateral. So we talked about skin in the game a little bit. That's a piece of that collateral, because that's owner equity investment. It shows that you are personally invested in what you've been trying to build up to that point. But then they also want collateral to take against any kind of lending you're trying to access. So if lending is what you're looking for, they want some sort of collateral. And oftentimes in that very early stage, they want more than 100% of the value. So if you're asking for $5,000, they may want something that can be collateralized at 10. Because they're taking on a huge risk on something that they're not sure is actually ever going to get paid back. So they want something to go out and take back if you're unable to repay the money. And I think just knowing that going into that process and it not being a surprise is important. Movement to sheet. No, we're. All of a sudden, it's not working. Okay, so another piece that they're gonna dig into in that process is, I'm gonna say it again, because repetition is the key to learning. Write a business plan. That business plan is how you prove to them that your idea tracks, that the plan you're making works, the numbers measure out, and that financial projection piece is always a part of building a business plan. It's the scary part. And I always encourage people to build financial projections that are your bare minimum and your best case. Do one sheet where it's like, this is what it would take to open my doors and keep them open. And then do another sheet that is like, if I am killing it and doing everything I wish I could do, and I'm maximizing everything, I could make this much money. Because the likelihood is you're going to fall somewhere in the middle. But first-time entrepreneurs in particular usually opt for that second one where it's like, I'm killing it, I'm going to be amazing. Well, you've never done it before. Then maybe you will, but probably not, because you're not 100% sure what you're doing. So I would say land somewhere in the middle of the two, but I love to do that bare minimum piece, because then if you're not hitting that, you know, I'm sinking. If you have 2 or 3 months where you're not hitting the projections you made for bare minimum, Houston, we have a problem. Like, it's not working and you need to figure out a solution. And then the last piece that they're going to want to understand is, who is your team? Who are you hiring? How are you building this out? It doesn't have to be humans specific that you know already. It doesn't have to have a name attached to it with a face. It has to be, who are the right people? What are the roles that are going to help you build a strong foundation to your company? And what do you need financially to get them hired, so that you know what those thresholds are as you're starting to build. So like, if you want to bring on a full-time assistant because you know that you need that type of help, what is that going to cost? And how long do you need to operate before you can get to a place where you can afford it? All right, funding is a two-way street. I have said that already once. Say it again. Make sure that you understand what your funders are looking for on the other side. Ask the questions. Ask them what they're looking for back. Ask them how much they want to participate. In particular with the angel category, they oftentimes want to help. They oftentimes have been entrepreneurs of some way, shape, or form. They have knowledge to share. They have connections to share. They want to be a part of it, but you have to ask. We can never assume that people are going to help. You have to ask for what you need, and you want to understand how much involvement someone wants in your business. And if we're talking about banking, we want to understand how they can help support your business. So some of the questions that you might want to ask are going to be things like, are there fees for early repayment? Is the interest rate variable? Are there going to be any additional insurances I need to carry? Anything that's going to add costs to your operating process by going through any type of lending or borrowing money, you need to ask the questions, because oftentimes it's spelled out in the contracting, but it's not something we talk about. So it doesn't occur to you until after the documents are signed and you're reading through them and you're like, oh my God, I have to pay extra money. What am I going to do? I didn't plan for that. That's an additional $150 a month, which when you're very small matters a lot. So asking the questions and asking how they're going to help. One of the most important things I learned is that you can actually ask your banker, what are you going to do to help me? Because they're making money on you. That's why they want your business. They're making money on you being a customer. So how are they going to help support what you're building? And really good bankers are happy to help. They love being a part of that small business community and making connections and helping foster things. They love it. So ask the question, and if they don't have an answer that you're comfortable with, it's okay to ask other people and keep shopping, because it's your money, it's your business. Okay, what matters more than money? Strategy, which is what we have been basically talking about and jumping around the whole time. Build your business plan, understand what you need and how you're going to spend that money. Be able to talk about it, because a lot of times, once you go through that journey of building that strategy, it turns out you don't need as much money. You had the ability to make revenue and pull in money in other ways. You don't necessarily need outside input. You need to understand what your process is to build revenue streams. So building that strategy oftentimes eliminates the need for that additional outside hunger for money. Because if you ask, all entrepreneurs will say is, I need more money. Well, you do, but you can earn it yourself if we build a strong plan to help you do that. And the last thing you need that is way more important than money is the relationships that you're building right now by going through this process, coming to events like this, sitting down, meeting people. Who's going to bail you out when things get into hot water? Do you have a banker that's on your side? Do you have an accountant that can help you make sense of things when they get weird? Do you have an insurance agent that understands how your business is growing? Because it's very easy to go online and buy an insurance policy, but it's really important to have an agent that you can call and say, oh, we just took on a new contract. I need to modify our policy. And they're willing to go with you. And then last of all, a lawyer. You need to have lawyers in your Rolodex, to date myself, that you can reach out to when things come up. It doesn't matter if you need them right now. You don't have to have them on retainer, but you need to have relationships with them so that when you reach out, when something is either exciting because you need a new contract or awry because something went sideways, you have someone that you already trust. You don't want to have to hunt down that resource when you really need it, because then you make bad decisions because you're desperate. Like, I need help now. I'll just take help, whatever help comes my way. So we don't want to do that. We want to build those relationships up front. All right, now we have questions.
Okay, so the way we do questions so that we can make sure that we get our online audience as well as our in-person, we'll go ahead and toggle back and forth between that. So Kimberly, do you have an online question?
We do. First, I want to say hi, Holly. And it's funny because we had questions come up that you answered. And we were all in the chat, you know, saying, oh, wait, she just answered that. She just answered that. But this is a great question that I think people have a lot of unknowns. The question was, where do SBA loans fall within capital? And of course, we hear the term SBA loans, but we know that the SBA doesn't actually give the loan. And then the person asked about, you know, insider experience with that process, which I do realize is a whole nother potential training class, but I think maybe you could help give us some more information.
So the SBA backs loans. They don't necessarily give loans. The loans are still going to come through a lending resource like a CDFI, which is one that I mentioned, a traditional bank loan. So they are on the back end of that, helping guarantee that money. Does that answer that question?
Okay. Anyone in here have a question? Back here?
Could we go back to that slide where you had the age doesn't matter and all of those subsection? Could we go back to that slide for 1 second?
And you will get the slide and the recording as well.
Because there was something on there that I wanted to ask the question.
Were we able to go back, Holly?
Restart maybe?
To your right, under questions to the left.
Oh,
Restart.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question that was based on this slide had more to do with you know, being in the micro enterprise space and wanting to kind of have that in comparison to some of the scaling numbers that were on that particular slide. I think that the first one was like 0 to 15,000. Let me see. It was gonna come.
Hold on.
soon.
It's the first one like that.
Right there.
There, yeah.
So for people that are offering a micro enterprise aspects for service or like consulting and like specialized boutique agency work, would you consider this to be like comparable? Because when you're in terms of a products and services perspective, because for a micro enterprise, it's like, yeah, I want to be able to offer services and products, but you know, it's all coming from just one small piece and one part source. So I was just wondering if these numbers going into these scalings for funding, if it's still relevant, or maybe we should like look at it from the perspective of a percentage instead.
Well,
Of like a
those
dollar
are
amount.
just windows. Those are just windows. They're not specific. And I will say, unless you're building a consulting firm with a plan to do that, it's gonna be really hard to access any capital, because then it's simply based on your 50 hours a week that you personally can work. So it's gonna be that is a category that it is incredibly hard to get any funding for. Unless you're specifically building a firm where you're going to have a staff that helps support that work, and you have a strategy to go out and get that work.
Kimberly, do we have another online question?
Yes. So a question, Holly, is not owning a brick and mortar a negative? You know, it used to be you weren't a business if you didn't have a shop. So can you just?
Not at all. Yeah, not at all these days. What matters is that business plan and your strategy to pull in revenue. You having a physical building is not important. In fact, in some situations, considered additional risk that you don't need.
Yes, and then I'll be. Yes.
My question is, I've been in business for almost 13 years. So I'm more of the growth expansion level. I wanted to see, and my question to you is, because this, to me, it's a hard stage to go through the hump.
It's very
If anyone has been in the position, there's ideas that you know what's worked and has failed. But for me now, it's in the phase of connecting with the right people to be able to reach that hump in expansion. We know, like, for example, I've been in plumbing. I know the administrative side that I currently do that work for the time being. My husband as well, he's the actual doer. We have a team in set, but my question to you is, and again, too, this is where I lie to, we have people that are selfish, they're not willing to provide. Is there resources that you can, that we can actually maybe connect with? I've tried to even go to Facebook but
I'm not sure what specifically you're asking for.
on networking specifically, on connecting, getting those ideas on the growth expansion. And
I would say start plugging into some of the programs that are out there. So like the Goldman Sachs 10K small business is really well positioned for where you're at. Their focus is on building out your opportunity for growth. So they don't necessarily, that program is not designed for very, very early stage businesses. It is designed for kind of where you're at, where you're trying to figure out growth opportunities. And they have a pretty heavy focus on understanding how to build out your network at that place, because it's different than in the beginning. And I would say, like, I can like dig into the community you work within. Go work with the chambers, work with all the community organizations, start meeting the decision makers within your municipalities that you serve, because they will also be your connectors. They might not be the one that hires you, but they will be the ones that suggest you. and understanding what some of those contracting situations look like for municipalities and growth opportunities that are going to be the bigger amounts of money that you can go after now that you have all that tenure under your belt and you can prove, yes, I can do this work. Because that's a lot of times when you're seeking those big contracts, that's what they want proof of.
Exactly.
But you're there, you did it.
Yeah,
So now it's a matter of building that connection space.
exactly, exactly.
All right, so that's all the time that we have for questions. For those of you that are here in person, I'm sure Holly will stay around and you can ask her. For those of you that are online, if you have specific questions for Holly, you can reach out and we'll send them on to her. So just everyone does get a copy of the slides as well as the recording, as long as you were registered. Really quick, so we're gonna try something new this month. Usually we separate at this point, do announcements and that kind of things. But we have our applications are open for our Accelerate Her program Dallas. So I know Holly mentioned that as that second category for launching Accelerate Her or accelerator and incubator programs. So we do have one that's open for Dallas. In addition to that, our December WomenRISE is scheduled for December 13th. We have SWAT, Your Business, Maximize Your Assets, Minimize Your Liabilities, with Nancy Auschwitz from Edvitera Accelerate Hers out of Kentucky. And tonight is our first small business training from 6 to 7:30. We're going to have Haley Phillips from Denton County Library. She's going to be talking about resources, as well as Tracy is going to be talking about business planning, which Holly just was an advocate for, as well as a little bit about finances and credit. That I believe registration is still open. It starts at 6 to 7:30. That is virtual only. So I'm going to turn this over to Kimberly, and then you guys can feel free to stay around. Tracy, any last minute?
Well, of course, we want to thank Holly for such a wonderful presentation. And for those that aren't aware, we have Live Plan. It's a business plan template we offer free to anybody. So if you want to get started on that, just let us know. Again, thank you so much for that. I just wanted to put that plug in there.
Yes, yes. All right, so Kimberly, I'm